Well, some may think the main event of Army-Navy weekend happens tomorrow at 1500. It might be argued that the challenges facing American soldiers and sailors today require the types of intellectual flexibility and logical reasoning that you'll see demonstrated tonight, just as much as the physical skills that you will see tomorrow at 1500. Today, the resolution we will debate is that the government should enact the Department of Veterans Affairs CARE, Coordinating Access and Rewarding Experiences, proposal. We hope, and Navy will take the affirmative, and Army will take the negative on that. We hope this debate will be an informative and exciting opportunity to learn more on this topic as we compete on the field of friendly strike. This debate is also the culminating round of the second annual Commanders in Speech competition between West Point, the Naval Academy, and the Air Force Academy. Based on the preliminary competitions that have happened so far, the winner of tonight's debate will take home the Commander-in-Speech trophy that Army currently possesses. I want to thank our judges for taking time out of their very busy schedules to be with us tonight. We're pleased to have Brigadier General Cindy Jebb, West Point's Dean of the Academic Board. Thank you, ma'am, for your support of West Point debate. Also, we have Dr. Andrew Phillips, the Naval Academy Dean. Thank you, sir, for being here. Additionally, we have Stephanie Baum, the senior editor of Med City News here in Philadelphia, and Kat Duffy, who is a PhD candidate at USC, as well as a former policy analyst for Media Matters on healthcare. She's also a former debate coach at Wake Forest University and Michigan State. Finally, we have, to provide our non-biased military representative, we have Captain Caitlin Clements here from St. Joseph Air Force ROTC Department. Few ground rules. In the spirit of debate, any views expressed will not necessarily reflect those of the cadets or midshipmen, their respective academies, or the Department of Defense. The debate will proceed in three parts. First, each side will give a 4-minute constructed speech, followed by 2 minutes of cross-examination. That'll be followed by another 6-minute speech with 2 minutes of cross-examination. Then there will be 3 minutes of preparation, and each side will give a 5-minute rebuttal. Afterwards, the judges will leave and deliberate and come back with their verdict. Again, thank you for your attendance this evening, and may the best team win.
Hello everyone, my name is Andrew Yu. Before we begin, I would just like to thank all of our distinguished judges for coming here tonight. This is a very valuable event for us and our opponents here, so we do really appreciate it. And then I'd like to thank you all for coming. Wish you guys well. Now to begin. It is widely accepted that American military veterans deserve the best care our country can offer. In 2017, this is not what is happening. The veterans of the United States of America are not receiving the care they deserve or even the care that they really truly need. The Veterans Affairs Administration in its current state is failing. Veterans are pigeonholed into a bureaucratic medical system with long wait times, a lack of doctors, and arcane rules which lock veterans into a systematic mess that gambles with their lives. A VA audit report issued in 2015 showed that 307,000 veterans died due to not having access to VA hospitals and extremely prolonged wait times. This number is astounding. To put that in perspective, this number is greater than the death toll of World War I, of Korea, and Vietnam combined. 3.8 million veterans today struggle with disabilities. Nearly 500,000 veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan struggle with PTSD. Aside from those appalling statistics, veterans face astronomically high risks of ALS, urological disease, skeletal disease, lung issues, along with other mental difficulties that come from combat. The VA is not fit to handle these millions of different cases in the status quo. No government hospital is. Representative Duncan Hunter and Peter Hexa, the head of a veterans organization, analyzed the VA's many shortcomings. Veterans face wait times of upwards of 1 year, and in metropolitan areas, wait times can exceed upwards of 600 days, which is almost 2 years. Even an increase of funding by $25 billion has amounted to absolutely nothing, showing actually less productivity. A report from just last week from the GAO showed that the VA has hit in 90% of cases where VA workers have been dangerous towards or harmed their veterans. Dan Caldwell, who is the head of the Organization of Concerned Veterans, writes, "The Phoenix VA had dozens who died on secret wait lists, while the Memphis VA was described as a house of horrors. This is widely unfair to our veterans. We need wide-scale veterans health care reform. The Coordinated Access and Rewarding Experiences Act, otherwise known as the CARE Act, would be the best possible measure to close the health care access and quality gap millions of veterans face across our country. The CARE Act, which was presented to Congress by the VA, would simplify VA eligibility requirements, giving vets faster access to VA hospitals. It would streamline both the admin and clinical processes, allowing for the administration and doctors to be on the same page. It merges and modernizes community care centers. It allows veterans access to private care facilities to better address their healthcare needs, such as offering veterans the use of networks for walk-in clinics for their minor ailments or other minor injuries. It implements business process procedures to better manage their finances. It improves their actual facilities. Eliminates the rule for the Veterans Choice Program that requires a veteran to live within 40 miles from a VA facility or face a 30-day wait to receive any form of care. And finally, encourages residency programs to increase the number of VA doctors available. The previously mentioned tenets of the CARE Act are by no means a complete end-all solution to the egregious treatment issues plaguing our veterans. However, they are the most complete and the most deliberate step in the right direction to close the healthcare gap that our veterans face. There are no other viable alternative options currently available to us that would come close to giving the veterans the care and respect they deserve. Our veterans need our help. After sacrificing everything for our nation, we have the duty to make sure they live in a place where they are treated like the heroes that they truly are. We need this CARE Act. Thus, we stand proudly resolved that the United States federal government should enact the Department of Veterans Affairs CARE proposal. Thank you.
What's the budget of the CARE Act?
Are you looking for a number?
Yes.
We don't have an exact number. We're just, our main point here is that it just lowers the cost overall of the current system and the status quo.
You read the CARE bill, right? What's the percentage that will be going to VA funding
The percentage of,
of the CARE bill? You said there's a percentage that goes to private care. What percentage goes to VA funding?
I don't understand the question, I'm sorry. Or the percentage of what it goes into.
Of the CARE Act, what percentage are you investing the budget into VA funding?
I'm not sure. I'm sorry, I don't
It's cool.
understand what you're asking.
Next question. What infrastructure does the CARE Act provide to hold private doctors accountable to the same standards that we hold to the VHA?
Sure, so when you have these private doctors all competing in this kind of like medical market, the inherent competition forces you to hire the better doctors and to have competitive costs and everything. And then it specifically, we address how it specifically increases and targets those younger doctors that are looking for the residencies and looking to enter the medical field. So it improves the long-term effectiveness of the doctors that are being hired.
So does CARE bound private doctors to the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Act?
Does it bound?
Them to that act that was passed July 11th. Okay, so the Whistleblower Act provides protections to whistleblowers. It removes employees for misconduct or performance, disciplinary actions to their doctors.
Yeah.
Does the CARE Act do this to private doctors?
If there are doctors that are hired as part of this CARE Act, or they are VA doctors, then yes. If they're
Would you be
specifically
able to
hired
show
for
me in
these
the
VA
CARE bill
programs.
where it says that they're bound to this act?
I mean, I can't really do that right now, but
Does CARE reduce wait lines?
yes.
Before me, I just want to reiterate my opponent's words. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight. Such a great panel, and thank you all for coming as well. And thank you to the team for being here tonight. It's always one of the best events of the year, so we really appreciate the opportunity to showcase our skills. We are at a crossroads on how to fix veterans' health care, and unfortunately only have a certain amount of resources. The line that separates the affirmative and the negative teams is how those resources are spent. The affirmative presents the CARE Act as their solution. And the bill's budget presented to the Senate Appropriations Committee, 33% of the increased funding would be given to the private sector, while only 1% would be given to the VA. This crucial aspect of the CARE Act is unacceptable and will lead to the privatization of veterans' health care. This funding allocation needs to be prevented for three major reasons. First, private health care is ineffective. Second, the care policy is inflexible and not subject to oversight. And third, veterans prefer care at the VA. Now to start on the first point, the affirmative team wants to paint you this picture of a beautiful private health care center that are going to solve veteran problems instantaneously. I'm going to be a little slap of reality and tell you that simply is not true. Wait lines at private health clinics are absurd. Commonwealth Health found that a quarter of adults wait 6 or more days for care when they are actively sick. And in areas of specialized care such as dermatology, wait lines in larger urban cities can be upwards of 72 days. Now compare that to the VA, where wait lines are actually decreasing, which is completely contradictory to the statistics that the affirmative brings up. 20% of the VA's appointments happen within the same day now, and the improvement of the VA's processing has allowed appointments to increase every year since 2001, with 2.4 million appointments more in 2015 than in 2014. Next, private care is unjust since the level of care received is dictated by those who are willing to pay more. In Section 202, Part B of the bill, veterans are allowed to use co-payments for certain treatments, meaning that wealthier veterans will get better treatment than their poor peers, who are most likely poor due to their medical conditions to begin with. This takes away valuable money from the VA system, which provides equal care to all, covering 78% of all low-income or disabled veterans. Furthermore, doctors in the private sector are simply profit-oriented. This is only proven further by the recent epidemic of private doctors over-prescribing patients in order to extract more money from insurance companies. Now ask yourself, why would this same money-seeking behavior happen between these private doctors and the VA itself? And you know what's not bringing in the big bucks? PTSD research, moral injury treatment, and innovation in prosthetics. The three areas of largest concern to veterans, which also happen to be the three areas in which the VA is the largest and most comprehensive provider. And who do you think will give veterans the proper time to address their needs? The private sector or a hospital staffed by over 33% of active duty soldiers and veterans? And this brings us to our second point. That care as a policy is inflexible and does not provide the necessary oversight for the private funding of dispenses. And this starts with how the issues of youth checks are exposed. The VA's problems are also experienced by the private sector, but just aren't shown since their information isn't public. This means that the VA is much more malleable to change. Twice every quarter, every VA facility is mandated to hold open meetings for veterans to express their feedback. Certainly not a feature in private hospitals where veterans only have a very small percentage. Finally, the sheer number of veterans that the VA is exposed to allows it to be a place of centralized information where medical officials can track the newest developments in veterans' health issues and change their treatments accordingly. As shown by the increased importance put on PTSD by the VA, as the disorder was more widely recognized in the 1980s and the 1990s. And this brings us to our third and probably our most important point. Veterans prefer care from the VA. This is shown best by veterans being specifically against the CARE Act due to its privatization, the group this CARE Act is trying to serve. These veteran groups include the Disabled Veterans Group, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the largest veterans group in the country, the American Legion. Furthermore, politicians on both sides of the aisle are also against the CARE Act, as shown by Congress refusing to pass the bill. Democratic Representatives Brownlee and Taco both advocated more funding to the VA instead of the private sector, and the chairman of the House Veterans Affairs Committee, Republican Representative Rowe, said he'd pursue his own bill instead of pursuing CARE. In the context of these reasons, the negative proposes that we change the CARE's appropriation of increased funds so the majority is spent internally within the VA and a comprehensive overhaul and expansion of Veterans Health Administration can be done. If veterans don't like it, both Democrats and Republicans don't like it, and Congress won't accept it, then neither should you. So cross-ex. Ready?
All right. So how exactly is your proposal different than ours, other than appropriating money?
Well, I think that's the very essence of the bill, is where the money is being appropriated. So that's the differentiating line between the two sides.
So it's the same, basically the same. It is the same thing as ours. You're just putting more money into.
It's almost a completely different bill based off where the money is being appropriated. The reason why this bill was created was to appropriate money to the private sector instead of the public sector. The negative team is saying that that can't happen, and the majority of those funds need to be maintained by the public sector. It's a very clear differentiating line between the two sides.
Okay. So how do you guys address all the veterans right now that need health care right now?
I think that's a great question.
That aren't getting it.
I think that's there's a three-pronged solution to that. So first, just investing in more physical facilities so more veterans can be accessed. I think second, it's investing in new technologies like telehealth, which allow veterans to be accessed in their homes through doctors through video screens that will allow this, that will allow veterans to be better seen by this as well. And I think third is filling the doctor vacancies that we see in the VA currently. The reason why
How are you doing that? How are you specifically doing
we
that?
would do that by getting more funds through a new act that doesn't appropriate them to the private sector.
So you're saying by
Wait,
giving
I'm
them
saying that we cannot currently do those solutions right now because the VA doesn't have those funds that it needs. And the CARE Act is just further harming the VA by not giving those funds to the VA and instead giving them to the private sector.
So is there any
If
guarantee-
you want those solutions, give the VA the funds to do those.
So is there any guarantee that if you do give the VA, which covers, like, what else does the VA cover? What else does
The whole
VA
Veterans Administration.
Yeah, because if you're saying if only 1% is going to the VA right now and you need more funds for the VA, where's the guarantee that that's going to go to all the things that you just listed? Like, yeah, that would be great.
Well, unless people are doing illegal acts where they go against, mandated congressional passed policy, I don't understand.
So you're gonna okay.
Well, yeah, we will legally mandate that the VA has to spend money in these certain ways, which seems appropriate.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Just want to repeat all of the words of thanks already been said. My name is Campbell German, representing the Naval Academy, and hope to have a good debate. Keep going. So, start off, the negative team has really missed the ball on this one. The current system, or the status quo of the Veterans Affairs, is failing us. We've presented numerous statistics that show this. Look at the fact that 300,000 have already died from the failings of the Veterans Affairs system. Look at the fact that 20,000 veterans from Afghanistan still are not being treated, and 32,000 from Afghanistan are still not being treated in the current system. Those are real statistics. There are statistics about waiting lines. I don't know where they got them. But if you look at the statistics we provided from the Government of Accountability Office, which was from last week, we showed that there is no oversight being given, and 90% of these cases are being hidden where veterans are actually being harmed. So their point, going to our points, we simplify eligibility, hoping those veterans that still need services get them right now before it gets before it gets worse. We merge and modernize community care centers. That means that veterans that aren't in that 40-mile radius don't have to wait a 30-day waiting period. In the status quo, that is what's happening, and that's what the Army team is affirming currently. So we're using walk-in clinics and providing new options so these veterans can actually get the services they need, which is not being provided in the status quo and what Army is going for. We better manage finances, which they don't even talk about. They talk about the percentages going to each thing, but they don't even talk about how that money is actually being used, which is important from the affirmative team. If we showed that there's been a $25 billion increase in funding for the VA, yet still no resources or services being provided to those veterans that need it right now from the war on terror. Their whole idea that we are privatizing right now, and that's what it will lead to the downfall of the VA, is misguided. We are not proposing that the VA goes away and that we replace it with privatized healthcare. What we are saying is that we currently have a problem with status quo that the VA obviously can't solve, and we need to fix the VA in the long term with more VA doctors, which our plan does. But in the short term, while the veterans are still suffering from illnesses caused by the war on terror, we need a solution now. And privatized healthcare is already available and accessible to those veterans if we go through with our plan. If we go through their plan and wait for all of the changes to happen in the VA, it might be too late for some veterans, like it already has been. If you look at the current reports in the news, we see how veterans are dying from long waiting lines. I don't hear you don't listen to the news and hear how normal people are dying from long waiting lines in the privatized industry. You only hear it from the VA, and that hurts the military's standing in the United States and makes us look bad. That we're not taking care of those veterans that really deserve these services. So going to there's 3 points. They say we privatize health and that privatized health isn't effective. But as I already pointed out, we need to help those veterans that have fought the war on terror and are coming back to no avail and to no resources being put towards them. We're not going for a long-term privatized healthcare system within the Veterans Affairs community. We're saying that we need to actually do something now, and that privatized healthcare is the fastest way to do this. And in the long term, the VA will eventually evolve so that they can provide these same services. They say that there's no oversight, but the oversight that's currently happening in the Veterans Affairs is failing. The Government Accountability Office said it so themselves. So what does this oversight even mean if it's obviously not succeeding in the VA? They're complaining that the privatized industry isn't going to have the same oversight as the VA does. But currently with that oversight, they're still failing. And it's from the government's reports themselves from last week. So 3, they say that veterans prefer the VA. That's also not true. We can look at the fact that the VA itself and Secretary Dan Shulkin, who is Secretary of the Veterans Affairs, is asking for this change to happen. They also point out that the American Legion is against this. The American Legion is not against this. The American Legion is on board. They might be right with the other groups. The American Legion is on board with the CARE Act specifically because of the problems happening with the war on terror and with those veterans returning. The veterans that are currently waiting in those 30-day wait periods are the ones that need help, and they're the ones that are reaching out. Just because they don't live 40 miles away from a hospital shouldn't mean that they won't get the access they deserve. And that's what we do by providing those improving facilities and better managing, and also providing walk-in clinics so that they can improve the community around them and use the community resources around them that are currently being wasted. They say that they are investing in physical facilities and that they're helping in telehealth and filling doctor vacancies. But Secretary Dan Shulkin of the VA says that the VA would also shore up VA facilities by improving buildings and boosting staffing levels where a large number of vacancies persist. So the Secretary of the VA says that our plan is already doing this. And we also showed that the investing of $25 billion in the last couple of years has not done this already. So if the Secretary of the VA is saying that we are already, that our plan will, 1, improve buildings and staffing levels, and 2, provide the actual services to veterans that are being hurt in the status quo, we should win as the affirmative team. The vote here goes to the team that better serves veterans right now, and the veterans that are suffering. And we provide higher access to veterans by providing them community-level support so they can solve even simple illnesses, simple sicknesses, such as pneumonia or the common cold or the flu. We decrease administrative costs by therefore looking and reinvigorating the system. And also look at the fact that we already have bipartisan support. The American public wants to help the veterans that are currently coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq and that need help right now. And that number is 52,000. And the number is 300,000 that have post-traumatic stress disorder. And the only way to solve for that is not through using the arcane system of the VA that is currently in place. So therefore, we stand firm that we should approve the resolution and help the veterans that are living in America right now and need this, and then therefore help and provide those services for those in the future that will also need it. Thank you.
Keenan, are you good?
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm nervous of some water.
Oh.
Shoot.
So the American Legion officially reported that they applauded Secretary Shinsky's effort to ultimately reject the bill. What evidence do you have to say that contrary to that?
I guess from the VA website itself, it said that they supported the CARE Act. And we can go back and forth on that. But
Okay, so if you agree that at least the other veterans groups opposed the VA bill, then why, if 300 veterans have died, specifically according to VA CARE, as you say, are all these veterans groups specifically against the CARE Act then?
they're against the CARE Act because they're worried about the privatization of the industry. And they're misinterpreting what the CARE Act does in terms of privatization, which is kind of what I explained.
Okay, that's a great point. So now let's go to the bill itself. Do you think this is a clear bill?
A clear bill. A clear bill in helping the fact that in the status quo, yes, people are dying. I think it's pretty clear in that bill.
Let's go to section 202, improving veterans' access to walk-in care.
Sure.
It says the Secretary shall require all veterans to pay the United States a co-payment for each episode of care and services provided under this section. Well, I think that is clear. Can you articulate where in this bill it says who's going to decide how much the co-payments will be?
Who decides the co-payments will be? Where in the bill it decides that?
Where in the bill would it say that? Because it seems to me that if that isn't articulated in the bill, then it gives the power to the private sector to then dictate how much the co-payments will be, forcing veterans who have sacrificed their countries to pay for their own health care.
The VA is going to be fronting up these costs, and we agree that there will be front-up costs that have to be paid. And we also, and that's the point, is that we need to front up these costs because we've wronged them.
So I think actually goes back to my partner's previous question about where in this bill does it dictate where the funding is coming from? If we're the ones who are funding this cost.
We showed that we were fronting up the costs. We
Can you show it to me again?
You showed that you gave us the percentages, the fancy 33% is going to this. That money would then be used to help us solve these problems.
Okay, now let's go to section 201, improving veterans' access to community care through eligibility reform. It says in this section the Secretary has the right to defurbish veterans care hospitals if they don't meet quality and access standards as the Secretary shall develop. Why aren't those standards put in the bill currently?
Why aren't they put in the bill currently? Because of failure to enact the bill probably. Like, look at the governmental leagues.
Because it would seem to me like that might be an IRA opportunity for lobbyists in the private sector to allow mass shutdowns of Veterans Health Association.
We're saying that we need to, I mean, that's not, I can keep talking.
Thank you all for coming out. It means a lot to me. I like the audience. Okay. Before I begin, I want to touch on some of the claims that they make. They say that the current system is currently failing. We are not the status quo. That's the difference between us and the status quo now. And I'm going to tell you about some programs that are actually helping now that the VA has funded. They say that 300,000 veterans have died, but they died because they didn't have beds, they didn't have staff, the VA facilities were low, and that's why our alternative plan will be net better. They say to prefer statistics, but the oversight is actually given through the VA Accountability and Whistleblower Act, because the VA is the most accountable institution. They always will report these things and protect those whistleblowers to mitigate that oversight problem. They say 40-mile radius to wait, but wait lines are not unique to VHA. Prefer Seamus evidence about 72 days of wait lines exist within the public sector. They say, where's the money going? They don't even know how much the bill costs. It's in the document. It's $4 billion. And we say, how about we invest all of that money into VA facilities? They say change is not happening now, but we have a lot of research and infrastructure that is created for veterans. And they mention the VA secretary, but I'm going to explain how just yesterday he overturned the decision to cut funds from a program to private care. So I'm going to go into that. We all agree that the VA health system is in a crisis. But what we don't need is another Band-Aid solution that outsources care for veterans in need of quality, veteran-focused health services. We are at a crossroads. What the affirmative ignores is that we're at this point because of decades of mismanagement and cost cutting, and they only want to kick the can further back down the road by sending people outside of the system for care. What we need now, more than ever, is a comprehensive overhaul and expansion of VA facilities and a robust recommitment to the VA's mission. The VA is the most effective, proven structure to give our veterans the help they deserve. We must invest in it, rather than send them to private doctors who are without the training or understanding of the unique health needs of our veterans. That's all the CARE Act is. It's my apologies, we don't have space for you, but here's a free ticket to go to private doctors with no guarantee that they'll actually help you. I stand here today to strongly discourage you from accepting the firmest premise that the answer to a broken system is to kick more people out of it. At this moment, in this debate, we call for you to invest more in the VA like our veterans invested in us. First, I'm going to remind you why we created the VA in the first place, and then I'm going to tell you why private doctors are net worse for veterans, and then I will sum up by addressing a few points. First, let us remember why we created the VA. VA health services are not fungible. You can't just plug in a private sector doctor and receive the same care. VHS was created to provide care for conditions that are unique to veterans, such as PTSD and moral injury. It allows doctors to provide holistic, long-term, veteran-centric care from professionals with expertise in addressing conditions like skeletal injuries, chemical exposure, noise exposure. The list continues. Privatization can never deal with the extent of these issues. As local hospitals may be seeing 1 or 2 of these kind of conditions a year, the VA sees hundreds every day. Enacting the CARE Act stops VHS from investing in the things that it actually does right. The midshipman's proposal is an inadequate and poor attempt to solve a symptom over undercoverage that has been born out of decades of cuts. Don't fix the symptom, fix the problem. The problem is not the structure of the VA. It is the amount of VA hospitals readily available to service veterans. That can be solved through our alternative plan. And CARE is trying to give veterans access to care, but it simply gives veterans access to wait lines. Congress invested $10 billion into choice. That was supposed to be the big fix, the big Band-Aid, to solve VA disparities. But because of that fix, veterans are waiting even longer to see doctors. Allowing access to private doctors cannot tackle veteran health issues. It can't even solve wait lines. But what can do that is the VA. Instead of having a 1.3% increase in funding, which the Appropriations Committee did the analysis on this, while only 33% is increase in funding for untrained private doctors, we should invest it all and go all in into investing in VA facilities. Every dollar you choose not to spend on the VA, another health disparity goes unchecked. It's pure economics. The events of this week prove that money is coming from the programs that actually are working. Look at the homeless veteran program. which reported reductions in veteran homelessness by 3.2% since 2016. Since 2010, this VA program has permanently housed 480,000 veterans and their family members. Yet this month, it was in jeopardy of its funds being cut and shifted to private care. And yesterday, like I said, the VA secretary reversed this because he knew that it would prevent us from adequately caring for our veterans. The Homeless Veteran Program is one of many programs, including telehealth infrastructure, that the VA actually does well. Don't allow them to create this narrative of the VA as something bad. Secondly, not only is expanding the VA better for our veterans, but the private sector solution is net worse. An op-ed from military.com reports moving veterans from federally run VA healthcare system into private sector hospitals would shift healthcare from veteran-centric to financially driven. It would cost taxpayers at least $3 billion more for private care. These VA savings do not come at the expense of quality. Even the RAND Corporation confirms that when veterans do get access to VA care, the quality is high. We need to stop talking and start listening to our veterans. Privatized healthcare is not what veterans want. A 2016 Veterans Pulse survey surveyed 22 million veterans. 80% opposed turning the VA healthcare system into a system of private doctors. We must listen to our veterans and stop telling them to wait for another Band-Aid solution that does not even begin to touch the surface of their issues. We're at a crossroads, and it's time to journey down the right path. They're no different from choice, and we need to start allocating these resources to actually help veterans. Thank you. Yes.
You said the problem isn't the structure, it's the number of hospitals?
Yes.
Okay, so how does your plan, how many hospitals does your plan need?
One hospital costs $1.2 million, and from that $1.2 million, we can finance six hospitals from the $4 million that your plan would have.
How long does it take to build a hospital?
How long does it take to build a hospital?
Yeah, like how long can you get all of those
It
hospitals?
depends how many workers you have working on it.
So you're just gonna quickly construct all these hospitals?
Yes, because our veterans care is essential. Like, we need to care for veterans, like you said.
So how long do you think it will take to build that number of hospitals?
It could range from 6 months to 12 months, but in the process, we can start hiring staff positions, because positions are limited in the VA right now. That's a lot of other things that we want to increase with the VA.
So you have like an arbitrary number of hospitals that you're making, and an arbitrary amount of
I already
time
told you
that it will
how many under the budget would we be able to create.
take. And then you say that they'll just be built in a certain amount of time based on.
What's the question?
I guess my point is that like you don't know how long it'll take to make those hospitals. And
I
you can't
told you
solve
how
it.
long it would take. Our argument is here. When you outsource veterans to private care, they're not getting the care. So what we need to do is invest in these programs like Million Veteran, health disparities. There's different kind of research programs that we have the research to help our veterans, but we don't have any money for it.
Is some care better than no care?
That's why you should invest in VA facilities.
That aren't there.
VA facilities are there now. They don't have the funds to fund the resources that they need, like beds and staff members. That's why you need the money.
So at this point, the two teams will have 3 minutes to put together their rebuttals.
So this debate has just consisted of a lot of back and forth between the two teams about whose plan is going to solve this better. So the first thing I want to address, do not let them claim that they have some other huge, wide-sweeping plan that they are using to address this problem. Their plan is allocating a higher percentage of money that is already in the government to the VA. They never give you what percentage that is going to be. They never say exactly how, or even what percentage of that VA money is going to go into the medical services that we were talking about. Their plan just says that they need more money. And for them to win this debate, they can win this debate if they show you, the judges, that all it takes is more money allocated to the VA, and especially the VA care system, to solve the problem of the veterans without health care. We've already showed the VA was given and specifically the healthcare system, was given $25 billion. $25 billion. I don't know what percentages they're going to be talking about, but $25 billion is a huge percent of whatever money they're allocating. And that wasn't even close to enough to help anything. In fact, it made it worse because they started they're trying to build more infrastructure like they're suggesting and building things. And that's not what the problem is. The problem is the bureaucratic red tape and all the hoops that the veterans have to jump through in order to receive any kind of health care at all. They're saying that the VA is the most effective, proven structure for our veterans to receive their health care, but this just simply is not true. 3.8 million veterans right now live with a disability. 500,000 of them have PTSD, and then my partner talked about the 32,000 from Iraq and 20,000 from Afghanistan from the war on terror that received injuries during their deployments overseas and still have not received treatment for them because they're just waiting. 307,000 people have died, and not because there weren't enough hospitals, because of wait lines and bureaucratic lack of access. Because they were able to find the hospitals to go to, but they either weren't able to enter them and get the treatment that they needed, or they had to wait too long, and by then it was too late. Finally, the GAO says that they're hiding 90% of mistreated cases. So we don't even know about all the problems that exist. We know about all the numbers here, but 90% of mistreatment cases go under the rug. So there's, for every one case that exists right now, there are 9 more that haven't even been talked about. Okay, next, they talked about how this would still be a short-term solution and a long-term solution. And then when my partner asked about how much money it takes for a hospital and how long it takes for a hospital, they're saying how they made up some number about however many months it takes to go to a hospital. Don't let them say this. They have no clue how long it takes to go to a hospital, for how long it takes the government to build anything. I mean, at the Naval Academy, we've been working on a parking garage for like 2 years, and it's not even close to being done. And that's a parking garage. Like, you literally just like have to make floors that you can stand on. And this is a hospital with like all the wide sweeping, like super important things that you need to help veterans with their prosthetics and with PTSD and all the equipment you need. I feel like that's going to take longer than a parking garage, and by then that's way too late for the 50,000 veterans that need the healthcare right now. Okay. And then finally, so we keep talking about the VA secretary, whether he wants it or whether he doesn't want it, but he does agree that it will increase hiring and it will fill the voids in the jobs that, or it will increase the amount of jobs that are there, meaning there will be more positions staffed to lead to the healthcare for the veterans. They talked about this like homeless system, how effective the VA is in solving homeless. Again, like this is just talking about healthcare. The VA does a lot of things. You know, it talks about employment, or it works on housing for the veterans, it works on their education, and like putting it back into the civilian world. We're talking about healthcare. Don't let them bright line different things that do not pertain to this debate. In the end, this debate is won by the team who solves for the care of our veterans the best way. That's the resolution, and that's what you need to vote on. And we do that because they don't have any alternative plan. We're going to sit here talking about the different costs you're going to allocate and how there's going to be more money so we can build more things, more people are going to be dying. They can sit here and talk about how the private sector is bad and there's still 72 days of waiting in the private sector on average, and how that somehow compares to the full years or 600 days on the VA. And while we talk about that, veterans are dying. They can talk about all these things and talk about how more money is going to lead to more things, and how, you know, $25 billion may not have been enough the first time, but this time we'll get it, and more veterans are dying. So, you as a panel have a responsibility to vote for the act, because we solve for the veterans right now. It's not a perfect solution. We don't claim for it to be. We're solving for 50,000 lives right now, and all those little different tenets in the bill that solve for things down the future with the different budgeting, with the different facilities that it does talk about. So we solve best for the veterans in the short term and the long term, and that's why you need to vote for us. Thank you.
Once again, it's an honor to close out this debate. It's been really fun. Enjoying what teammates, and it's good. So as we have said since the beginning, we are at a crossroads in how to allocate increases in funding for veterans' health care. The affirmative, through the use of the CARE Act, asks for that funding to be disproportionately spent in the private sector. We advocate that we need to reject the affirmative plans for a few reasons. First, private care is ineffective care, disadvantaging those with low economic statuses, as well as not prioritizing the types of research most needed by veterans. As Isabella said, privatizing the VA would make doctors cost-driven, not care-driven. And I think what goes unanswered in the last speech is that private care really isn't this perfect solution, especially when you look at the waiting lines that happen in private care right now, or the way that doctors abuse prescribing medications to their patients to make more money. No answer is brought out by the affirmative team to this. Furthermore, they say that $25 billion has already been given to the VA, and the VA has messed up this opportunity. That money was invested into the choice program, which cornerstone policy piece was that it allowed veterans to go to the private care. So the reason why that $25 billion didn't solve is because that money was then being siphoned off into the private care for choice. It wasn't all given to the VA, which we allocate for. So another reason why you shouldn't vote for the affirmative team. Then they cite statistics like 38 million veterans have disability, and that's why they should go to the private. That's why they should go get private care. If that is true, then why does the Veterans Group for Disabled Veterans say that this CARE Act should not happen if disabled people are going to benefit from the plan? And that goes down to other points as well. They're talking about veterans are coming back from wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Why are these veterans groups, are these specific wars, against the CARE Act as it stands? And I think if you can't answer that question, that's a serious reason why you should be voting down and not voting for the affirmative team. Then they say that 30,000 people have died due to specifically due to the lack of the VA's healthcare. So I question that statistic immediately from a pretty biased perspective. But then furthermore, where's the comparison to the private sector? As we showed with wait lines in the private sector are really bad as well. Why would, people are probably just dying in general because they don't have access to care as a whole. And furthermore, if we stop siphoning off funds from the VA, then these deaths will decrease, as my partner said before. Then they give us a statistic that's saying 90% of cases where there's been problematic instances are under the rug and uncovered. This just doesn't make any sense because I don't know how you can know how many cases are under the rug if they're under the rug. So I don't really understand why this gives a lot of weight in these debates to begin with. Which brings us to our second point. CARE as a policy is inflexible since the private sector information is not open to public analysis. This makes the VA a much more malleable organization as they listen to veterans' concerns and adapt their treatments, making the premier institution of veteran information. They talk about red tape and a slow process. So first off, we're implementing things when we expand the VA that are going to cut down these wait times, such as like telehealth, such as decreasing the amount of vacancies we have in doctors right now. But furthermore, I think what they call red tape is just doing a systematic process that ensures veterans get the care that they need. So just making sure that we get direct feedback from veterans so the care is continuously improving. That we're analyzing the information of PTSD and moral injury in ways that the private sector doesn't care about. And that we're doing methodological treatments for mental health that take long periods of time. Where they're advocating for this very quick, short, easy solution where the private sector is just going to bang out patients because it makes them more money is not the solution that veterans with these specific care issues need. Furthermore, they said that this example of homeless veterans doesn't matter, but it is a great example of how the current Secretary of the VA who proposed this CARE Act wanted to take valuable funds away from a program that was helping veterans in order to invest in the private sector. And how ultimately the public was so outraged by it that it failed. A similar thing should be done with the CARE Act. As is being done right now, is so many people are against it, including Congress. And this finally brings us to our final point. No one likes the CARE Act. It's not just us. 80% of veterans oppose privatizing healthcare. The country's largest veteran groups also oppose it, along with politicians on both sides of the aisle, ultimately resulting in Congress choosing not to pass the bill. Voting for the affirmative is not just disagreeing with us, but disagreeing with all those groups as well. Now finally, as you weigh these arguments, consider this as well. Ultimately, where veterans receive healthcare should be a moral issue. The United States government has the responsibility to provide care within its organization for veterans in dissent to war. Allowing these veterans to be sent to private care establishes a dangerous precedent which the government can feel comfortable asking its citizens in the Army, Navy, and Air Force to completely sacrifice and service their country and then hide their wounds when they return home, but not forcing the government to reconcile what it's done to this people. This creates a lack of transparency and deferral of responsibility. Instead, we need to improve the VA internally through a multitude of solutions, but as we've suggested, increasing telehealth, where doctors can have access to veterans inside their actual homes, decreasing the vacancies that are currently plaguing the VA and allowing the wait time to happen, and then building more physical facilities that allow people to actually walk in and receive care. This will allow the organization that has time and time again proven it provides veterans the best care to keep increasing its ability to treat them. Every dollar you choose not to spend on the VA will result in another health disparity going unchecked in the private sector. Vote for us, vote for evidence and argumentation, vote for specific research on PTSD and other issues that only veterans face and that aren't shown in the private sector, and vote to give veterans the public health care that they deserve.
All right. So at this time, the judges will seclude themselves and determine and deliberate for a verdict, and we'll get back to you when that happens.
It was very close, and the judges ultimately ended up voting for the Army. We ended up deciding that way because while we thought the act was very persuasive at sort of explaining the reasons why the VA is problematic in the status quo, there wasn't really a compelling reason why the private sector can solve a lot of the problems that usually exist in the short term, while the other side made arguments about why the VA is key to solve like military-specific illnesses, and also had defensive arguments about why the private sector is also pretty bad at dealing with healthcare, essentially, wait lines, etc. It was very close. It was a very good debate.
All I know is a tremendous debate. If you both said, we all said, we didn't want to debate you. And I thought the fact that you're showing what it means to bring good argumentation, civil discourse, appreciated the camaraderie across the services, and at the end of the day, that's what this is about. So, kudos to both teams. I liked how you talked about the short term and the long term. I think could really continue to pull on that thread. At the end, I liked how you talked about resources. At the end of the day, where is it coming from and who's deciding if this is a moral issue and so forth. But I thought both teams did a terrific job. And it's a great example that you're providing for everybody.
I think we're all heartened on an issue of this importance that two groups have taken an opposing point of view, understand the issue as deeply as you do, and contest it collegially without sort of the animosity you see so much in the country today. So maybe I'll address the rest of my comments to the group. We are in great hands if this is the future of our country. To have folks thinking about things in this way, we are really grateful. So I just have to look one wall.
I thought all of you did a fantastic job debating a very complex issue, an emotional issue, and I thought you all handled yourselves very well. I liked the way that you used the metaphor of the Army garage, and I thought that was really strong, and in some ways it would have been better if you'd been able to kind of tease that earlier. I think that might have been a stronger argument. I also like the way Army used veterans groups to kind of back up their arguments, and I thought that was really effective. I also thought you did a better job handling the costs, and you weren't as rattled, I suppose, and we stopped hearing them.
Again, feeding off of all the judges that were before me, both teams did a wonderful job. I would not want to be in your shoes right now, or even before this. This is a very heavily talked about bill, and it's a very important topic. Maybe where we had a good approach, I think we lacked the rebuttal when we asked you some questions to defend your support arguments. And Army, I wish you would have gotten a little bit more into tying. You spoke a lot about homelessness, but I wish you would have tied a little bit more into healthcare. Working in Philadelphia, unfortunately, we see a lot of homeless veterans, and how can we provide them with care because they also need care as well. I also love the parking lot. My last assignment, we actually had an old hospital that 2 years before could even start plans to be torn down with 2 beds in the hospital. So great job, everyone.
All right, let's hear a round of applause for both teams. We hope to see you next year.